3 weeks ago, I received a text message that made my hands tremble. After 8 years of complete silence, my mother suddenly wanted to know how I was doing, asking about my job and whether I was financially stable. The timing felt wrong, especially since she had completely cut me off when I needed her most. As I stared at that message, memories of being abandoned for her new family came flooding back, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she wanted something from me. Before I continue this story, please let me know which city you are watching from in the comments below. Do not forget to hit that like button if you have ever felt betrayed by your own family. This story will show you that sometimes success truly is the sweetest form of revenge. Growing up, it was just me and my mom Linda after my father died in a horrific car accident when I was 6 years old. Those early years were some of the happiest of my life, despite the tragedy we had endured together. Mom worked as a registered nurse at the local hospital, pulling long 12-hour shifts to make ends meet, but she never once made me feel like a burden. Every Friday night was our sacred movie night where we would curl up on our old couch with a bowl of buttery popcorn and watch whatever film I had picked out that week. Sundays were reserved for baking chocolate chip cookies together, filling our small apartment with the warm scent of vanilla and brown sugar. These traditions became the foundation of our relationship, and I treasured every moment we spent together. Mom would always tell me how proud she was of my academic achievements. I was naturally gifted in mathematics and science, consistently earning straight A grades throughout elementary and middle school. She would display my report cards on the refrigerator like trophies, bragging to her coworkers about her brilliant daughter who was destined for great things. During those years, I felt genuinely loved and supported, believing that nothing could ever come between us. We had survived losing Dad together, and I foolishly thought that bond would last forever. Everything started to change when I turned 14 and Mom met Derek Thompson at a hospital fundraising event. Derek was a 42-year-old mechanical engineer who worked for a prestigious aerospace company downtown. He owned a beautiful 2-story house in the wealthy Riverside neighborhood, complete with a perfectly manicured lawn and a 3-car garage that housed his BMW sedan and pickup truck. Derek had been divorced for 3 years and had 2 children from his previous marriage, Connor, who was 12, and Madison, who was 10. From the moment Derek entered our lives, I could sense that something fundamental was shifting in my relationship with my mother. Initially, Mom tried to include me in their budding relationship, bringing me along on casual dates to family restaurants and local parks. However, I quickly noticed that Derek seemed uncomfortable around me, often making subtle comments about how serious and studious I was compared to his own children. He would joke that I needed to learn how to have more fun and be less focused on my schoolwork remarks that always made me feel self-conscious and out of place. Meanwhile, Connor and Madison were typical kids who enjoyed video games, sports, and social activities more than academic pursuits, which Derek clearly found more relatable and appealing. As the months passed, Mom began canceling our Friday movie nights because Derek had invited us to Connor's baseball games or Madison's dance recitals. Our Sunday baking tradition disappeared entirely when Mom started helping Madison with her homework or driving Connor to various weekend activities. When I expressed disappointment about these changes, Mom would gently explain that I needed to understand her desire to build a relationship with Derek and his children, assuring me that our bond remained just as strong as before. The warning signs became impossible to ignore when Mom announced that we would be moving in with Derek and his kids. She presented this decision as a wonderful opportunity for all of us to become one big, happy family. But I felt a growing sense of dread about what this change would mean for my place in her life. Derek made it clear that I would be sharing a bedroom with Madison while Connor kept his own private space, explaining that boys needed more privacy during their teenage years. When I questioned this arrangement, pointing out that I was older than both of his children, Derek dismissed my concerns by saying that I needed to learn how to be more flexible and accommodating. The favoritism became blatantly obvious during my first month living in Derek's house. When Connor's old phone broke, Derek immediately took him to the store to purchase the latest iPhone model, complete with an expensive protective case and unlimited data plan. A week later, Madison complained that her phone was outdated compared to her friends', so Derek bought her a brand new device as well. When I mentioned that my ancient flip phone barely functioned anymore, Derek told me that phones were luxuries, not necessities, and that I should focus on my studies instead of material possessions. Mom said nothing during this conversation, avoiding eye contact when I looked to her for support. By the time I turned 16 and Mom married Derek in an elaborate ceremony that I was barely included in the dynamics of our household had become painfully clear. Derek frequently complained to Mom about my influence on his children, claiming that my academic focus was creating unnecessary pressure and competition. When I received a full scholarship offer from the state university, an achievement that should have been celebrated, Derek dismissed it as showing off and making his kids feel inferior. To my absolute devastation, Mom agreed with him, suggesting that I should be more humble about my accomplishments and considerate of how they affected Connor and Madison. The first major betrayal occurred during my junior year when I discovered that Derek had used the money Mom had been saving for my college expenses to purchase a brand new Jeep Wrangler for Connor's 16th birthday. Mom had been setting aside small amounts from each paycheck for years, often sacrificing her own needs to build this education fund that was supposed to secure my future. When I confronted them about this theft, Derek became furious, screaming that I was an ungrateful child who did not appreciate everything he had done for our family. He accused me of being selfish and entitled, claiming that Connor deserved the car because he had been working hard to improve his grades and had joined the school's football team. The situation escalated when Mom not only failed to defend me, but actually took Derek's side in the argument. She told me that I was being disrespectful to my stepfather and needed to learn how to show proper gratitude for the roof over my head and the food on my table. The money had been used for a good purpose, she insisted, because Connor needed reliable transportation to get to his job and sports practices. When I pointed out that I had been promised that money for years and had been counting on it for my education, Mom coldly replied that I was smart enough to figure out other ways to pay for college, unlike Connor, who needed more help and support. That night marked the first time I truly understood that I was no longer Mom's priority, or even a valued member of her new family. The realization hit me like a physical blow, leaving me feeling hollow and abandoned in a way that was different from losing my father. Dad's death had been a tragedy beyond anyone's control, but Mom's betrayal was a deliberate choice that she made with full awareness of how it would hurt me. I spent that entire night crying into my pillow, trying to understand how the woman who had once been my biggest supporter could so easily cast me aside for people who had only been in her life for 2 years. The breaking point came just days before my 18th birthday, when Derek presented Mom with an ultimatum that would forever change the trajectory of my life. I overheard their conversation through the thin walls of our house, Derek's voice growing louder and more demanding as he explained his position. He told Mom that he could no longer tolerate having me in the house because my presence was disrupting the harmony of their family unit. According to Derek, I was a constant reminder of Mom's past life, and my academic success was making Connor and Madison feel inadequate and resentful. Derek's ultimatum was simple and brutal. Either I left the house permanently, or he would take his children and end his marriage to Mom. He had apparently been planning this moment for months, waiting until I was legally an adult to make his move. Derek told Mom that she needed to choose between her daughter and her new family, making it clear that there was no middle ground or compromise possible. He wanted me completely out of their lives so that they could move forward without any complications or reminders of the past. Mom's response to this ultimatum shattered whatever remained of my heart and destroyed any hope I had of maintaining our relationship. Without hesitation or apparent internal struggle, she chose Derek and his children over her own daughter. She told me the next morning, on what should have been a celebration of my 18th birthday, that I needed to find my own place to live because I was now an adult, capable of taking care of myself. There was no birthday cake, no presents, no acknowledgement that this day had once been important to both of us. Instead, Mom handed me $500 in cash and told me that she had fulfilled her legal obligations as a parent. Derek stood in the background during this conversation, a satisfied smirk on his face as he watched the final destruction of my relationship with my mother. He did not even pretend to feel sorry about the situation or offer any words of encouragement for my future. To him, I was simply an obstacle that had finally been removed, clearing the way for his perfect family vision to become reality. As I packed my few belongings into 3 small suitcases, neither Derek nor Mom offered to help or suggested that we stay in touch. It was as if 18 years of my life meant nothing to the woman who had given birth to me and raised me. Walking out of that house with everything I owned in 3 battered suitcases, was the most devastating moment of my entire life, but it also marked the beginning of my transformation from a heartbroken teenager into a fiercely independent woman. I found a tiny studio apartment in a rough neighborhood for $400 per month, a space so small that my bed doubled as my couch and my kitchen table. To survive, I took on two part-time jobs, waiting tables at a busy diner during breakfast and lunch rushes, then working retail at a clothing store during evenings and weekends. The schedule was exhausting, leaving me little time for sleep or relaxation, but the physical demands of work helped distract me from the emotional pain of losing my family. My full scholarship covered tuition and books, but I still needed money for rent, food, and basic living expenses. For the first few months, my diet consisted mainly of ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and whatever free food I could get from the diner where I worked. I lost 15 pounds during those early days, not from any intentional diet, but simply because I often could not afford enough food to feel truly satisfied. Despite these hardships, I threw myself into my college coursework with an intensity that surprised even my professors, using academic success as both an escape from my pain and a way to prove my worth to myself. During this period, I made several attempts to reconnect with Mom, calling her phone number at different times of day and leaving voicemails that she never returned. I sent her my new address and phone number, hoping that she would reach out to check on my well-being or at least acknowledge that I existed. The silence from her end was deafening and crushing, confirming that her choice to abandon me had been final and irreversible. After 6 months of trying, I finally accepted that the woman who had once been my entire world no longer wanted any part of my life. My salvation came in the form of Professor Elizabeth Hart, a distinguished economics instructor who recognized my potential during my sophomore year. Professor Hart had built her career studying financial markets and had connections throughout the business world, and she took a special interest in mentoring students who showed exceptional promise. When she noticed my dedication and natural aptitude for economic theory, she encouraged me to consider pursuing advanced degrees and aiming for high-level positions in the finance industry. Under her guidance, I began to see a path forward that could lead to both financial security and professional fulfillment. Equally important to my recovery was my friendship with Sarah Williams, a fellow struggling student who lived in the apartment next to mine. Sarah had also been abandoned by her family, though under different circumstances, and we bonded over our shared experiences of having to build new lives from nothing. She became like a sister to me, offering emotional support during my darkest moments and celebrating my small victories along the way. Together, we created our own chosen family, proving that blood relationships were not the only source of love and loyalty in the world. My hard work and determination paid off when I graduated summa cum laude with my bachelor's degree in economics, earning recognition as the top student in my major. Professor Hart helped me secure a full scholarship to pursue my MBA at Northwestern University, one of the most prestigious business programs in the country. This opportunity felt like a complete validation of all the sacrifices I had made and all the pain I had endured since leaving Mom's house. For the first time since my 18th birthday, I allowed myself to feel genuinely proud of what I had accomplished. During my MBA program, I distinguished myself as a natural leader and strategic thinker, earning internships at top-tier financial firms and building relationships with industry professionals who would later become valuable mentors and colleagues. My thesis on emerging market investment strategies caught the attention of recruiters from Goldman Sachs, who offered me a starting position as an investment analyst with a salary of $120,000 per year. After years of eating ramen noodles and working multiple jobs just to survive, this offer felt like winning the lottery. My career progression at Goldman Sachs exceeded even my most optimistic expectations as I quickly established myself as a rising star within the organization. My ability to analyze complex financial data and identify profitable investment opportunities impressed senior executives, leading to rapid promotions and increasing responsibilities. Within 5 years, I had been promoted to senior vice president with a base salary of $350,000 per year, plus substantial bonuses that often doubled my annual income. The scared, abandoned teenager who had once lived on ramen noodles had transformed into a confident, successful woman who commanded respect in one of the world's most competitive industries. With my newfound wealth, I was able to create the life I had always dreamed of having. I purchased a stunning penthouse apartment in downtown Chicago with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of Lake Michigan. My wardrobe evolved from thrift store finds to designer pieces, and I drove a sleek BMW that would have made Derek green with envy. I traveled to exotic destinations around the world, staying in luxury hotels and experiencing cultures I had only read about in books during my impoverished college years. The final piece of my personal happiness came when I met James Patterson, a brilliant attorney who specialized in corporate law. James understood my drive and ambition because he had built his own successful practice from humble beginnings, and we connected on both intellectual and emotional levels. Our relationship developed naturally over months of dinners, theater performances, and weekend trips to his family's cabin in Wisconsin. When James proposed to me on a beach in Maui during a romantic vacation, I felt like I had finally found someone who truly valued and cherished me for who I was. 8 years after walking out of Mom's house with nothing but 3 suitcases and a broken heart, I received the text message that would force me to confront my past in ways I had never anticipated. The message was deceptively casual, asking how I was doing and whether I was happy with my life, but something about the timing felt calculated and suspicious. Mom had not acknowledged my existence for nearly a decade, so her sudden interest in my well-being seemed unlikely to be genuine maternal concern. After discussing the situation with James, I decided to respond cautiously, curious to learn what had prompted this unexpected contact. Mom's response revealed the true motivation behind her outreach, confirming my suspicions that she wanted something from me, rather than genuinely caring about my happiness or success. She explained that Derek had been laid off from his engineering job 6 months earlier due to company downsizing, and their family was struggling financially for the first time since I had known them. Connor, now 26 years old, had been accepted to graduate school, but needed $40,000 for tuition and living expenses. Madison, 24, had been offered a spot in a prestigious ballet company but needed $20,000 for training costumes and travel expenses. The most infuriating part of Mom's message was her casual mention that she had been following my career through social media and professional networking sites, watching my success from a distance without ever reaching out to congratulate me or express pride in my accomplishments. She had apparently known for years that I was thriving in the financial industry, yet had chosen to maintain our estrangement until she needed something from me. Her request was phrased as an opportunity for me to prove myself as a loving daughter and show that I had forgiven the past, but I could see through her manipulation tactics immediately. I agreed to meet Mom for coffee at an upscale cafe in downtown Chicago, choosing a public location where I would feel comfortable and in control of the situation. When she arrived, I barely recognized the woman who had once been such a central figure in my life. Mom looked much older than her 53 years, with gray streaks in her hair that she no longer bothered to cover, and clothes that appeared to have come from discount stores. The confident, vibrant nurse who had raised me had been replaced by someone who seemed worn down by life's disappointments and compromises. Our conversation started with awkward small talk about my apartment and career, but Mom quickly shifted to more emotional territory, expressing regret about how our relationship had ended and claiming that she had missed me terribly over the years. She cried as she spoke about the mistakes she had made, insisting that she had been caught in an impossible situation and had not known how to handle Derek's demands. According to her revised version of history, she had been pressured into choosing between her husband and daughter and had made the wrong decision out of fear and confusion rather than lack of love. However, when Mom transitioned from apologies to requests for money, her true priorities became crystal clear once again. She painted Connor and Madison as deserving young adults who simply needed help achieving their dreams, emphasizing how hard they had worked and how much potential they possessed. Connor had apparently struggled academically throughout high school and college, finally finding his direction in graduate school, where he was studying environmental science. Madison had trained as a dancer since childhood and was finally getting her big break with a respected ballet company that could launch her professional career. Mom's pitch was emotionally manipulative, designed to make me feel guilty for having resources that could help while choosing to withhold them from family members in need. She repeatedly emphasized that this was my chance to prove that success had not changed who I was fundamentally, and that I still cared about the people who had shaped my early life. The request was framed as a temporary loan rather than a gift, though no specific repayment terms were discussed, and I suspected that Mom never intended to pay back any money I might provide. When I asked Mom to explain why I should feel obligated to help Connor and Madison, after they had benefited from the abandonment that destroyed my relationship with her, she struggled to provide a coherent answer. I pointed out that these were the same people for whom she had sacrificed our relationship and that they had never shown any interest in getting to know me or including me as part of their family unit. My success had been achieved entirely through my own efforts without any support or encouragement from the people who were now asking to benefit from my hard work and determination. I then made a counteroffer that I knew would reveal Mom's true character and priorities. I would consider providing the requested financial assistance if she was willing to write formal apology letters to both Connor and Madison, acknowledging how she had treated her biological daughter and taking responsibility for the pain she had caused me. This request was designed to test whether Mom was genuinely sorry for her past actions or simply willing to say whatever was necessary to get what she wanted from me now. Mom's immediate rejection of this proposal confirmed everything I had suspected about her motivations and character. She became defensive and angry, accusing me of being vindictive and using my financial success to manipulate and humiliate her family. According to Mom, asking her to apologize to Connor and Madison would be unnecessarily cruel because they had been children when these events occurred and should not be burdened with adult conflicts they had not created. She insisted that I was trying to punish innocent people for decisions they had not made, revealing that she still did not understand or acknowledge the impact of her choices on my life. The conversation reached its climax when Derek called Mom's phone during our meeting and she answered on speakerphone without asking my permission. Derek's voice had not changed over the years, still carrying the same arrogant, entitled tone that had made my teenage years so miserable. He immediately launched into a verbal attack, calling me selfish and ungrateful and demanding that I step up to help the family that had provided me with a home during my formative years. His version of history completely ignored the fact that I had been kicked out of that home the moment I became a legal adult, and he showed no awareness of the irony in asking for help from someone he had worked so hard to exclude from their family unit. My response to Derek's tirade was calm but firm, reflecting the confidence and self-assurance I had developed through years of professional success and personal growth. I told him that I owed nothing to people who had treated me as expendable and had actively worked to remove me from their lives when my presence became inconvenient. The family he was referring to had been his creation, not mine, and I had never been a true member of that unit, despite living in the same house for several years of my adolescence. When I informed Mom that I would not be providing any financial assistance under any circumstances, she broke down crying and made one final attempt at emotional manipulation. She claimed that refusing to help would mean destroying any possibility of rebuilding our relationship and that I would be responsible for ruining Connor and Madison's futures because of my selfishness and inability to forgive past mistakes. Her threats and guilt trips had no effect on me, however, because I had finally learned to value my own worth and refuse to accept responsibility for other people's choices and consequences. My final words to Mom were carefully chosen to convey both my boundaries and my newfound peace with the situation. You made your choice 8 years ago when I needed you most, and now I am making mine when you need me most. I explained that she had taught me that family relationships were conditional and could be discarded when they became inconvenient, and that I had learned that lesson well. The woman who had once been my entire world had become a stranger whose opinion and approval no longer mattered to me. Walking away from that coffee shop, I felt a profound sense of liberation that surprised me with its intensity and completeness. For years, I had carried anger and resentment about the way my relationship with Mom had ended, never fully processing the grief and abandonment I had experienced. This confrontation had finally allowed me to see her clearly as she truly was, a woman who had chosen security and comfort over love and loyalty, and who was now facing the consequences of those choices without taking any real responsibility for her actions. James had been waiting for me at my apartment, and his supportive presence helped me work through the complex emotions that arose from facing my past so directly. He listened patiently as I described every detail of the conversation, offering insights and observations that helped me understand why I felt so much lighter after definitively closing the door on that chapter of my life. James had grown up in a loving, stable family, but his professional work had exposed him to many stories of family dysfunction, and he understood the courage it took to walk away from toxic relationships regardless of blood connections. The weeks following my meeting with Mom brought a sense of closure that I had not expected to feel so completely. I stopped checking social media for updates about Derek's family, and I no longer felt the occasional pangs of wondering whether I had made the right choice in cutting them out of my life. The girl who had once desperately wanted her mother's love and approval had grown into a woman who understood that some relationships are too damaged to repair, and that protecting your own mental health sometimes requires making difficult but necessary decisions about who deserves access to your life. My wedding to James 6 months later was a celebration that reflected the family I had chosen rather than the one I had been born into. Sarah served as my maid of honor, and Professor Hart attended as an honored guest who had played such a crucial role in shaping my professional future. The ceremony was small but meaningful, surrounded by people who had supported me through challenges and celebrated my successes without conditions or ulterior motives. As I spoke my vows, I felt grateful for the journey that had led me to this moment, including the painful experiences that had taught me to recognize and appreciate genuine love and loyalty. The success I had achieved professionally continued to grow as I took on more challenging projects and built a reputation as someone who could be trusted with high-stakes investment decisions. My colleagues respected my analytical skills and strategic thinking, but more importantly, they valued my integrity and reliability in an industry where those qualities were sometimes rare. The scared 18-year-old who had once lived on ramen noodles had become a confident leader who mentored other young professionals and contributed to her company's continued growth and profitability. As I reflect on my story now, I realize that Mom's abandonment, while devastating at the time, ultimately forced me to develop strength and independence that I might never have discovered otherwise. Learning to rely on myself and build relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation has led to a life filled with genuine connections and authentic success. The people in my life now choose to be there because they value who I am, not because they feel obligated by blood relations or because they need something from me. The lesson I have learned is that family is not defined by genetics or legal relationships, but by the people who stand beside you during difficult times and celebrate your victories without jealousy or conditions. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is recognizing when someone does not deserve a place in your life, regardless of how they are related to you or what role they once played in your past. Setting boundaries with toxic people, even family members, is not cruel or selfish, but necessary for creating space for healthier relationships to flourish. Have any of you ever had to make the difficult decision to cut ties with family members who were negatively impacting your life? I would love to hear your stories and thoughts in the comments below, because these experiences can feel incredibly isolating when you are going through them. Please hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family drama and building success from difficult beginnings. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that it is possible to thrive even after being abandoned by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I hope it inspires you to value yourself enough to demand the respect and love you deserve. Remember that your worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to treat yourself when faced with challenging circumstances.